Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. We hope that you enjoy today's sermon by our pastoral staff at Christpoint Church. We also want you to know that if you have any questions, prayer requests, or need information on any of our ministry opportunities, you can email us at www.info@christpoint.church. We love you and we are praying that this will be the best year yet. Welcome home.
Right on. What God did last month for our ladies, and it was a little over a month ago, but I'm calling it last month, and what God did last week for our men was yesterday's battle. It was yesterday's battle. It is good. And you know what? It is part of our record. You know, for the first time in a long time, Go Big Orange has a pretty decent record right now. It's not the best, not what we want, but it's okay. We need that record, but we need a today move. We need a new move for a today battle. See, we can't just bank on yesterday's victory for yesterday's battle. Let me just paint you a picture of what that looks like. If I go into battle and our team kills the enemy soldiers today, we can't just rest tomorrow and say, well, we killed some of them because new soldiers are coming. So we've got to remember every day is a new battle, and yesterday's appointment won't unlock today's chains. So we need a new move for a today battle. We need a new move that is going to be coming for tomorrow's battle. So let's talk about Saul. And we're going to go to New Testament Saul. Saul, he was a young man of esteem. He had a pedigree, so to speak. He had a name that was passed on to him by his father that carried some significance. He was well studied. He didn't rely on any of that. He was well studied. He was well educated. He studied and he was taught under one of the most learned and respected religious teachers of his faith. He had everything going in the right direction. His name, of course, is Saul of Tarsus. We know him as Paul, pretty much the author of most of the New Testament. And that's a whole breakdown between why he didn't go by Saul after that, and we'll teach that sometime. But we know him as Saul of Tarsus. So we're introduced to him at the end of the 7th chapter of Acts. When we're introduced to him, he's basically approving of, and he is basically sanctioning, and he is basically taking full credit for the judicial execution of Stephen. So coats were being, he was being revered. It was almost like it was a good thing. And he was being exalted through this. So we meet him again in Acts chapter 9. So we're introduced to him quickly in Acts chapter 7, and then we find more out about him in Acts chapter 9. See, in Acts chapter 9, Saul's looking for a new appointment. It's kind of like an RPM excitement. You know, an RPM excitement was a brand new appointment last week. But now it's time to start realizing that I have to have a brand new appointment, a brand new move. I can't move on yesterday's move. I have to move on today's move. So today's a different battle. So Saul's looking for a new appointment. He's looking for a new assignment. See, we're going to learn something from Saul that maybe we didn't know before. I hope this is new to you. So we're going to look at mainly and mostly two verses in Acts chapter 9, and that is verses 1 and verses 2. So verse 1 and verse 2, not verses, but verse 1 and 2. So let's just read those. But Saul, still breathing out threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest. Let's just stop and let's just look at that word still. Let's just kind of mentally make a circle around it. That word still. If somebody is still doing something, that means they were doing it before. And that means that if you are still doing it, then I'm aware and everybody else is aware that you are still doing it. So in other words, you know, it's like the story I told about my friend years ago who smoked, and he quit smoking. And I went to his father's a couple days later, was hanging out, and went to his father's house. Loved his father and mother like parents, second parents to me. And I said, well, hey, you know, I won't call him by name. He may be watching. So, it's so good that so-and-so quit smoking. He said he hasn't quit smoking. He just quit buying. He's smoking all my cigarettes. So that's one way of trying to trick me into thinking that I was bragging on him all over the place. He's quit smoking. See, in other words, he's still smoking. He's still smoking. So if Saul is still doing something, that means it is pretty much broadcast. It's common knowledge. It's almost like having a newspaper in the town that Saul is the attacker and the persecutor and the enslaver and the murderer of Christians, and he's still doing it, and that means he was doing it, and he hasn't changed. So, verse number 2, and then Saul asked the high priest, asked him for letters to the synagogues at Damascus, so if he found any belonging to the way, whether it be men or women, that he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. Let's just kind of get on down in here and look at this thing. Let's look at some key words, some key phrases from these two verses. Number 1, he went to the high priest. Number 2, he asked for letters. Number 3, he received those letters. Number 4, he received letters that gave him authority to bring people bound. So that's some pretty key things I want to look at right there. Number 1 is, here's what Saul the persecutor was accomplishing in his Antichrist mind. So his mindset, you say, well, he wasn't an Antichrist. The word anti or anti means against. So Antichrist means against Christ. So he had an Antichrist mentality at this point in time in his life. So here's what Saul the persecutor, Saul the Antichrist mentality, here's what he did and he accomplished that we're afraid to try. In 2021, we're afraid to do so. Even though these are not good things, we need to learn from them. So we're afraid to try some of these. See, Saul had a new assignment, got a new move. Man, I'm rolling with my new move. My old move's not good enough anymore. I want a new move, and I want a new assignment. See, this is a move that he would create. See, I think that we need to realize sometime that we're creating a move, and it's a subordinate move, and it lacks power. If our move's confusing us, it's probably because we created it. So Saul has created his own move. It's a move that would probably elevate him. It's going to elevate his status. It's going to elevate his fame. It's going to elevate him. So here is another thing that we're very good at. We're very good at elevating us. We're very good at it. We're human. All of us do it. He was elevating, his move was created by him and was to elevate him and his status with the world around him at the time. He was working on a move that would cement his name among the greatest of all Pharisees of all time. He is the one that squelched and completely annihilated that move. That Jesus movement. So he was the one that was going to have that labeled to him and go down in history and be a famous Pharisee for squelching the thing that almost got started. So Saul, here's the thing we need to learn. He was zealous. He was passionate. He was sold out to what he believed. I think we need to learn right here that we need to take a lesson right here. If we know Jesus, we need to be sold out. If we understand Him, then we need to be passionate. If we have a relationship with Him, then we need to be zealous. And if it's what we believe, then don't let anybody deter our thinking. So we need to be focused on what we believe. See, this is what Saul believed. He believed that this new Jesus movement was harmful to their religious tradition. So I'm going to put it into it. He was doing wrong. But in his eyes, he wasn't doing that wrong. He was doing what he thought was best. So, 2 chapters earlier, we mentioned it in chapter 7. Saul has just sanctioned the killing of one of Christ's earliest followers, and his name was Stephen. And Saul's on an emotional high. You got to realize he's on an emotional high. Let's just kind of think back to August, ladies. You're on an emotional high. Man, it's great. Man, this is awesome. Man, we're rolling here. I'm loving everything about this. This is great. So you're on an emotional high. Let's think about last week, men. RPM, man, we come home. We're going to pray for people. We're going to put our arms around people. We're going to pray. We're going to seek the Lord. We're all going to wear camouflage. Nobody's even going to see us in the house. We're invisible. So it's going to be awesome. We're going to match. We have a team uniform on. See, but even in his twisted, antichrist mentality. He didn't rest on yesterday's move. This is what Saul didn't do. He had just come off an emotional high, getting credit for shutting down one of the so-called speakers of Christ, and he is being exalted as the man. But here's what he didn't do. I'm not going to use that as my platform. I'm not going to let that be my legacy. See, he didn't rest on yesterday's move. He went hard after the next move. Even if he had to create it, he went hard after the next move. Here's the second thing. I want you to notice he had access. He had access. I think we underestimate the access. Underestimate terribly the access. See, access creates authority in the proper assignment. So if we have access, then we need to act like we have access. See, this is what he did. He had access, Saul did, with the high priest. So he sought out, he presented his request to the high priest. Oh, high priest, this is what I want from you. I want to be the one that puts an end to this Jesus talk. I want to be the one that puts an end to it. So I need letters of authority from you, giving me authority to do what I need to do. Are you in agreement with me? So he had access, and he wasn't afraid to use it. See, here's our problem in the Americanized gospel. We have access, and we don't even know it. We have access, and we're afraid to use it. Jesus is also referred to by many names, but some of those are prophet, priest, and king. So if Jesus is our prophet, our priest, and our king, then you know what? We have access to the king. We have access to the priest that he went to. So we have a commonality here. So he is our king. See, you and I have access to the king. I think we underestimate that. I think we roll on. I mean, seriously. We are going to and fro, wide open. We're clocking in, clocking out. We're constructing, we're building, we're tearing down. We're learning, we're opening books every day. And you know what we're not doing? We're not accessing the power. Saul used his access to do bad. But here's the bottom line. He used his access. See, we have access to Jesus. We have access to Jesus. Do you know that our children are dying before they're born? Our children are dying after they're born. Do you know that our families are deteriorating? Do you know that our marriages are failing at an alarming rate? Do you know our morals are non-existent in this country? Do you know that our land is corrupt? And do you know why? It's because we have access and we're not using it. That's why. We have access and we're not using it. We don't even know how. Most of society doesn't even know how to access the throne of God. Most don't even have a clue in this world. Our Christianity is the weakest it's ever been in the history of Christianity, and it's because we don't use our access. So, I just think that is almost terrorism right there in a statement. Christianity is the weakest it's ever been, and it's because we have access and we won't use it. Think about it. It's like, well, I own a bank. Well, it's just like my daddy owns a bank, and there's about a gazillion dollars in the bank, but I'm living in poverty. Well, why don't you go to the bank? Why don't you just go get some? I don't know. I have to get up and go over there. It takes effort. You know what? Yes, it's going to take effort to go to the throne and say, Jesus, I have access and I'm using it. And I am using it. So our churches are closing their doors at an alarming rate. Our churches are dying at an alarming rate. Addictions are what I call at a pandemic level. Not something else in this world, but addictions are at a pandemic level. And you know why? It's because we're not using our access. We're not using our access. We're not capitalizing on the connection that we have. So access is authority. Access is authority. Saul's access gave him authority. If we'll notice in verses 1 and 2, he went for access. He capitalized on his access. He made his access. He made that connection work for him, and he left with authority. Access is authority. Saul's access gave him authority, and he left that meeting with the authority that the high priest had. He left that meeting. RPM was last week's move. We need a new move this week. We need a new move this week. We need a right now authority. Because a yesterday's authority is good for yesterday. I need a right now authority. I need a right now authority that comes from a right now access. So I can't, and I'm just going to say this. I'll be blessed their hearts. I love them, and Tina and I tried to help them. We sat down with the church several years back, almost 10 years ago, and they said, how can we be more effective? We've been here for 40 years, and we're still the same number we've ever been, and it feels like we're dying. And Tina and I gave them a list of things that we assessed, and here's what, and we just got attacked. We just got attacked. It's like, well, you don't understand. You have access, but you're not using it. But what we used to do worked. I said, you just said what you used to do worked. But we don't need you to tell us do. Well, you just asked me what to tell you to do. So, but people used to come, but you're just saying again, people used to come. In other words, you're trying to unlock new doors with old access and with old keys. Please just think a little bit outside the box. See, we can't, RPM was last week's move. We need a new move. We need a right now authority. We need a right now move, and it comes from a right now access. Not a yesterday's access, not mom and dad's access. It comes from a right now access. Do you know what the right now access gives authority to do? I'm just going to ask this question. I'm going to look at it. What does a right now access give us authority to do? Well, it's all in verse 2. It's all in verse 2. With his new authority from the high priest, this is what the word says, so that if he found any belonging to the way, he might bind them. He might bind them. See, I still don't think we're getting it. I still don't think we're getting it. Right here we should have went, oh, wow. Oh, man. With our authority, we have the ability to bind what we consider the enemy. So I think we need to look at this. Saul's access gave him authority to bind what he considered at the time his enemy. So our access gives us the ability to bind the enemy. And we're not using it. We're not using it on a regular basis. Do you see how powerful your access is? Authority is power, and authority has the power to bind the enemy. Do you realize Saul was headed out to bring people back to Jerusalem, bound up, enslaved. And we're going to look at it in just a second. I'm going to jump ahead. But to bind the enemy, we need to realize that we have an ability through our access to give us authority. Authority brings power over the enemy to bind them. I don't know if we're getting this or not sometimes. When something is bound, it is enslaved. It no longer can make its own decisions. It is enslaved. Notice with me that Saul went after men and women alike. See, this was a brand new tactic. This was a brand new tactic. I'm going to attack the man and the woman now. So, I'm going to tell you why he did this. See, he meant to destroy their hope. If I drag off dude's wife, man, he's going to, his children. It's different if he thinks he's going to be imprisoned and enslaved. It's different if he thinks maybe his life will be required of him. But if I kill or murder or enslave his children and his family in front of him, that's a different story. He'll back down. In other words, he meant to destroy their hope. So, when you bind the enemy, let's explain this. When you bind the enemy, you're not just keeping him away. You're not only imprisoning him, you're not just having authority over him, because I think this is what we do. Lord, in the name of Jesus, I come to you and I bind Satan in this situation. So, that's power. Tina and I walk in that all the time. Get away from my friends and my family, Satan. I mean it. Because I'm standing in the authority of Jesus and I'm going to bind you. I'm bind your hind end right now. So you're the one in chains. See, this is what I think we think sometimes is we're just kind of locking him down. We kind of got him locked down. He can't move. But I want you to know it's deeper than that. Not only do we keep him away, not only do we lock him down, imprison him, not only do we have authority over him, but by enslaving someone, and binding them up, it destroys their hope. So let me tell you something. It's different to bind the devil than it is to destroy his hope. So I want to bind him to where he's like, look, I can't do that again. I'm still walking funny from the last time I attacked them. Make sure he knows that he can't come any closer. Not because you are anything and I am anything. It's because I have access to the authority. I have access to the power that enables me to speak a binding into your life. See, when hope is destroyed, we ain't got no want to anymore. See, the want to is gone. So when hope is destroyed, no one is cultivating a want to. It's like, well, if I keep getting in the ring and I keep getting hit in the face, you know what? I'm not going to want to do it again. So the want to is gone. So Saul created his own move, and it ended. His move was brief. It ended in a flash of light. It ended on a dirt road headed to Damascus. And I want you to notice where he ended up, on his backside on the ground. Sometimes I want us to realize that the more of our move we create, the lower we're going to get. See, the thing is Saul had to get as low as he possibly could before Jesus really could get his attention. See, this move that he created and that flash of light that he had to experience left him blind as a bat. Left him blind. See, Saul created a subordinate move. Saul created a subordinate move. I mean, this is a move that is all him. Has nothing to do with the Lord. Is all him. See, how many subordinate moves are we creating? How many subordinate moves? See, a move that created a false authority. See, he was working on this false authority and doing a real good job of it. So, how many of these moves, these subordinate moves, are we cultivating to create a false authority only to make ourselves feel better? See, his old move was doomed from the start. Our old moves, our self-created moves, they're doomed. They're not going to last. They're just about this thick, and that's all they're ever going to be. He had to be blinded to his move. We find that in verse 6. He had to be blinded to his move. Sometimes, and it takes this for some of us because we're so stubborn, that we have to get to a place to where we can't see our move anymore before we can actually envision God's move. So Saul had to be blinded to his move. I'm just blinded to my move. I might as well just forget about it. You know what? He had to be blinded to his move so he could envision and embrace and see God's move. But notice with me where it all began. I want you to notice where it all began in verse 2. I want you to notice something with me. He goes to the high priest. He says, give me them letters, dude. I need you to give me letters. Letters are authority. I need you to give me letters. Give me letters. Give me authority. And I'm going to kind of paraphrase. I'm going to kind of role play this a little bit. When you, the priest, speaking of Saul, when you, the priest, give me, Saul, letters, you give me a portion of your authority. So I'm asking you to give me a portion of your authority, and your authority through my voice is all that I need. So this is what I call a proxy power. Saul had proxy power. Let's just rephrase this just a little bit differently with our priest today. Jesus, when you give me my letters of authority, then I have authority and power over the enemy to bind him. And I need to be accessed, flowing in that access. And I have proxy power. Let me explain to you what the word proxy means. Proxy is a person who is given the power or authority to do or to vote or to speak for someone else. So in other words, I can't be there, so I need you to vote for me. I'm giving you proxy. You are my proxy in that vote. So you know what? That means that you vote exactly. My authority is your authority now. So when we have proxy authority, that means we have proxy power. That means whatever we speak comes from the authority that is given to us. Saul went to the king or to the priest and said, look, I need a letters from you that will give me authority to speak binding into the enemy. See, we have proxy power, y'all. We have proxy power, And once again, I just don't think in America we're using it. Habakkuk 2, verse 2, I want to show you what this says. Speaking of a letter of proxy power. Write the vision. Write the vision. Now I'm telling you, if you want to lose weight, then keep a ledger. Keep a record of it, and you can go back tomorrow and say, well, I didn't do as good as I thought I did. Write it down. Write it down. He says, write it on tablets and make it plain. In other words, don't make it confusing. Make it plain. Make it bold. Write the vision. Write it so everybody can see it, so the ones that read it can run with it. This is what that says. Take a letter, put the enemy on notice by using that letter. So I have some up here. I have some envelopes up here on the stage, and I want you to come get some in a few minutes. I want you to put the enemy on notice. I want you to put the enemy on notice, and I want you to tell him, look, this is what I want you to know. I'm going to write on this envelope, maybe write on a piece of paper, put it in the envelope, and say, look, this is what I'm praying for. This is the authority that I have. I'm exercising my access. I'm exercising my authority. I'm exercising my power, and you have no authority in my life. So you know what? This is off limits to you. This is off limits to you. Take a letter and put the enemy on notice. Put the enemy on notice. You have access. You have access. You have power. You are a proxy voice of God into your situation. You are a proxy voice of God into your situation. You notice that I didn't say the pastor was a proxy voice into your situation. You notice that I didn't say your grandmother who prays all the time was a proxy voice into your situation. I'm telling you right now, you are a proxy voice of God speaking the power of God into your situation. You're the one. You're the one. Write the names of every person and make it plain. So this is what I want you to do in a few minutes. I want us to pray one, then I want to invite you to come. I want each one of us to take an envelope. And I've only got 100, so I don't know. I mean, everybody could take one. If not, we'll figure out where we can get you one. But I want us to take an envelope, and I want us to write the vision and make it plain. Make it noticeable. Put the devil on notice that I am a proxy voice of the Lord, and every person on this envelope matters to me. Every situation matters to me, and I'm going to make it plain where I'm not going to forget it, and we're going to run with it. You know who runs with it? The Holy Spirit runs with it. You know, maybe the Holy Spirit's waiting on us to make it plain. Sometimes I don't know that we're making it plain enough. We're not explaining it enough. Maybe we got to explain it a little bit better. We got to make it plain. Well, doesn't the Holy Spirit understand me? Yes, but sometimes I think we've got to get to the point to where we are walking in the access of prayer, of power, and we're not doing it. Hello again, and thank you for tuning in. I pray that today's sermon has spoken to your heart and has ministered to you well. We just want you to know that we have two locations, one at our Sparta campus, our main campus at Sparta on the square in Sparta, and our second campus is at Smithfield behind Ace Hardware. And we would love for you to call Christpoint Church your church home. And if you're viewing this and you can't get in to church and you feel like you want to be a part of the church, then you can always be a part of the church. Just drop us a note and let us know that you enjoy being on board with us. And if you'd like to give and be a part of the ministry, then you can do that by just sending a check to one of the locations at 614 Murphy Street, Smithfield, 13 Liberty Square in Sparta, and we'll get you on the road. We just love you so much, and you can download the Christpoint Church of Tennessee app, and you can give online. So we are real people. We're living real lives, and we're serving a real God. And we just want to tell everyone, welcome home. We're so glad that you tuned in with us. Welcome home.